let's open it up to tonight's discussion, and we're asking
You didn't get your introduction, please.
who
You.
I did. I'm a lawyer by trade. I'm an
Oh
amateur
yeah, you did.
songwriter, and that's about it. Got
Okay,
two
thanks.
daughters. I go to church in Berkeley, and life is good. So
He's in a place where he can talk climate change in church.
yeah, yeah. So I am my calling in my ward is as the ward sustainability officer. It's a calling that we're making up, but I expect it to be in the manual within a few years. And I'm
3 months.
able, yeah, yeah. Well, it's official part of the church program, and we know from General Conference that creation care is part of the gospel of Jesus Christ, and that's part of my testimony, and I try to share it. Our ward has a sustainability fireside in January, February. I'm planning one, and we get eight or nine people to talk about what they do. This is coming from Catherine Hayhoe. Talk about one or two things that you do or that you'd like to do this coming year to be more involved in action, because we're supposed to be an action team. And so if you ever feel depressed or distressed, the antidote for that is action. There's no question about it. Our bishop has already told me that he's going to come and talk about green investment. He's an investment advisor and consultant, and it's how you can put your money into places where those companies are respectful of God's creation. So I'm looking forward to that. And I'd like to put a plug in for one of our absent members, one of our member of our leadership team, Ian Sandlin. And Ian asked, he had a conflict tonight. He said that one of his favorite things was a Zoom presentation we had. I believe it was in August, where we watched clips from a fascinating documentary. And if you haven't seen this, you have to see it. It's called Hot Cold True False, or actually, it's called True False Hot Cold. But there's a guy, a documentarian from New Zealand named Ben Stillerman, and he traveled to Emery County, Utah, and spent a lot of time there to get the sufficient trust of these people, ranchers, farmers, and regular folks, to be able to talk to them about what they thought about climate change and creation care. And the way he did it was so lovely and so respectful. The guy is a master listener. And that's probably what our team is the worst at, is listening. And so we're going to talk about that next year. And that's something I want to get better at. If you want to talk to people, you better be prepared to listen to what they have to say. Otherwise, it's a slap in the face. So Ian Sandlin, who couldn't be here, he wanted to talk about that. The documentarian is a guy named Ben Stillerman, and he works out of the Social Cohesion Lab out of UC Berkeley. All right, UC Berkeley, to reduce the amount of polarization that's going on in our society. So there's more to talk about, but I've been blabbing long enough. So let's turn it over to somebody else. Oh, I got one more thing. Sorry. What I'm looking forward to in 2025 is we have sort of a coalition of Latter-day Saint creation care groups, MESA, Mormon Environmental Stewardship Alliance, our group, the Latter-day Saint Action Team of Citizens Climate Lobby, Mormon Women for Ethical Government, because they're heavily involved in creation care and stewardship issues. And last but not least, the largest group, which is Latter-day Saint Earth Stewardship, and they're just got the broadest array of resources and the closest relationship with our church. So they're very, very important member. Every April, and you'll be hearing about it, we co-sponsor an event in the Salt Lake area. The date that I want you to save is Saturday, April 12th. That date has been accepted by 3 of the 4 organizations as closest date we can get to Earth Day, which is April 21st or 22nd. And that has to do with Easter Sunday on April 20th. So save Saturday, April 12th. It usually involves a service project and then around 6 o'clock at the Dome Chapel. We hope to have a great keynote speaker. Our dream keynote speaker is Jenica Sedgwick, the church sustainability officer. And Dave Reiser, who should be on this call, wrote her a message on our behalf, inviting her to come and speak. So I'm really looking forward to that. If we could do that, that would be fantastic. Okay, who wants to go next?
So I'll go next if you.
Sure.
And I'll be brief. The big accomplishment that I'm really proud of, and I'm kind of showing off for Rebecca Ricks, was that we created a web page this year for our group that's actually even beyond our group, and that's the LDS Creation Care Community. It's just ldscreationcare.org, but it's a page that we are hoping can bring all of these different creation care groups together with and provide materials and references and notices of events, and Rebecca can explain it more than I can, but she's just done an incredible job with this. And one of the things that I'm hoping we can do with this after the first of the year is and we've talked to this about this as a leadership team, and it kind of goes along with the meeting that LDS Earth Stewardship had last night. We want to provide some reference material about how you talk to fellow conservatives, especially members of the church, about climate change and environmental issues. I believe that is something that we could do that and stand out with, that would make us unique. And this is where we need all of your help, especially you, Katie. We and Rebecca, we need some younger people to help us. And so we'll do some of the legwork. Tom and I'll kind of get out some documents, but we need you guys to review them and mark them up or tell us what we're missing, because I'm pushing 70. A bunch of us old guys don't have all the answers. And we need to make sure we do something that is very inclusive, and you will have better ideas than we will, but I think this could be an incredible resource for people, because everyone I talk to about this struggles with how do you talk to other members of the church, especially really conservative members, about these issues, and doing it in a kind, Christ-like way. I mean, how would Jesus talk about this? That's kind of been my theme. So that's my goal for next year. So stand by. We will need all your help.
And Katie, we really do hope you can connect up with Rebecca and help us out. Dave Folland, jump in.
Just a couple of things. maybe because I have a short memory, but a meeting that stands out to me was just this last one with Ian, talking about having these folks come over to England from that he knew, and then having an intentional discussion about climate change. And I thought that was wonderful, because I realized myself, most of the people that I kind of interact with, I've talked about it. They kind of know a little bit where I am. I sometimes don't know where to kind of start again to bring up a discussion or continue a discussion, but I just love the way that that he did that. I did want to say too, Dave Reiser would be here, but he's on his way to California, and he's going to spend that California. He's got a head start on Christmas by going there. But Dave Reiser and I were together at a meeting that was sponsored by Utah Clean Energy, where they had a speaker, Gene Olwang, who is pretty internationally known on working on the area of partnerships, and the focus of that was on partnerships. Well, anyway, after her presentation, people raised their hands, and the woman right behind us was Jenica Sedgwick, sustainability director for the LDS Church. And so afterwards, Dave and I kind of corralled her for a few minutes. There were other people who wanted to talk with her, and I was so impressed with her. That she was at this meeting because it was, broad spectrum of people from the community and quite a few community leaders and stuff who were there. And so for next year, boy, I really hope I have an opportunity to meet her, and particularly, if she's able to do the C3 meeting, that would be fantastic. So one of the things, my son joined the church a little bit over a year ago. So as we raised our kids, we kind of actually were connected with the Presbyterian Church, and my two daughters really don't have any real faith connection, but he became very interested. Went through the lessons, was baptized, and he has a real love for the environment, like I do. And anyway, I really haven't talked with him a lot about the LDS Action Team, about what we're doing, and what some opportunities for him might be. But I could imagine him, as he kind of gets his feet on the ground a little bit more, I think, wanting to be the sustainability leader for his ward up in Logan. I don't know. So that's something we haven't even talked about, but I plan to do that this year.
Fantastic. And, Dave, with that, this becomes an interfaith meeting right now. I just love that. So, yeah, thank you for all of that. That's the conversation the presentation that Ian made, his reporting on those 5 conversations with his conservative friends, that was a perfect array of the responses you get talking to people about climate change. It's not a big deal, or yeah, but I don't believe in electric cars, or whatever it was. It's just an amazing series of responses. So that was a lot of fun. So who'd like to go next?
I can go next.
Craig.
So it's been a good year. Many of the things that I'm doing is probably more internal. We've stopped using plastic bags at the store. We bring our own bags, doing things like that. That's, I think, hopefully good for the environment. I enjoy being with LDS Action Team and CCL and having the discussions that we have, and trying to talk to people. That's kind of a learning experience, I think. Some people don't want to hear anything about it. Others agree with it, but are not actively involved. And then others are very much concerned about it. One thing with me is I was concerned about going into this next year that because of some political changes that have taken place in the country, there may be more animosity against climate change and things that might happen. But there was an article in the newspaper this last week about it may not be as bad as what I was thinking. There's a lot of political partisanship now, or nonpartisanship, concerning climate. Many corporations are now involved with climate, and many people in other different aspects of society are involved with it too. So it sounds like there were some positive things. It's made me more hopeful concerning moving forward. But it also makes me aware that we need to continue moving forward to get the word out about the earth and the stewardship of the earth. And hopefully with this new encouragement that I saw in this article, I've got the article if anybody wants to see it. It's encouraging. And I'll leave you with that.
Hey, Craig, can I ask one question? Since you went to Washington, D.C. to lobby
Yes.
members of Congress, and we are the Latter-day Saint Action Team for Citizens Climate Lobby, could you just describe a little bit more about your experience going there for 4 or 5 days, getting prepared in a team and talking to members of Congress? Not everybody's heard about that, and it's so central to what we do because we're a nonpartisan group.
Yes.
And we go to talk to people in Washington who you would think would be very partisan. So can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yes. Part of it that's not involved with the actual meeting there is Dave Reisner and I went together. And we decided instead of taking a plane, we'd take the train. So I've never done that before, but we crossed the country in a train up to Chicago and then over to Washington, D.C. That was an enjoyable experience. I didn't realize how many people took the train. When we got there, we divided into different groups to visit our representatives. And because of the number of people there, I visited with people from Utah, Representative Curtis, Senator Lee, but then also I was assigned to go with individuals from Arizona to one of their representatives. In all three cases, I would go into their office. We never met with the actual representative or congressman. We always met with their staff. Their staff was very receptive in talking to us and seemed to have interest in the things that we were saying about climate and our concerns about that and different bills that were put forth in Congress and the House Representative that pertain to items that pertain to the stewardship of the earth through legislation. And each of us was assigned a different legislative action thing and talked about them, and then we're going to talk about them and get responses back. Like I said, the responses were positive. We then had some meetings that we went to as a group of CCL people that we listened to as they talked about different subjects, and that was very informative and a good learning experience. But it was a positive experience. The response back from our congressmen and senators, their offices was very positive too, as they listened to what we had to say.
Great.
Any other questions or anything?
Thank you so much, Craig.
You're welcome.
Any other questions for Craig? By the way, that documentary about Emery County, we saw that at the conference in June in Washington, D.C. They showed that as part of the training on how to talk to people. And they chose Emery County because it was deemed to be one of the most conservative counties anywhere. And yet the conversations were just amazingly great. So anyway.
That's right. I forgot about that. Yes,
Yeah.
it was there.
It's good. Okay, who's next? Dan.
Yeah, I'd be glad to talk. I feel like I stumbled into this meeting kind of strangely. I want to apologize for rambling to begin with and not listening intently to Tom as he did his initial introduction. So my apologies, and I'll try and make it up in briefly sharing my interests. And I guess I see climate change through the lens of the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, and it's very central to those. I mean, it's number 13, its own goal. 14 and 15 are preservation of wildlife, and then there are several others that really get on having sustainable patterns of consumption and production, electrical systems, sustainable agriculture and energy. And anyway, I like to see that within that context. Last night, as I was thinking about the LDS stewardship and where I would go with that, I actually met somebody last night. We were able to exchange emails and I think can get me involved in more interfaith conversations about the global sustainability goals as well as climate action. I've thought about, I haven't had these conversations except with siblings and some friends. And usually it's once I sense that they're a little like-minded that I enter into that discussion. I have a couple of relatives close relatives, brothers, sisters, son-in-law, who are antagonistic, and we don't talk about this sort of thing. But I thought last night's presentation was powerful with the different quotes that we had and the things that the church is doing in terms of sustainability. And I thought, what are some fora that we can enter into those discussions? If we're asked to give a sacrament meeting talk, will they give us the freedom to do this? If we're asked to give a family home evening, can we present that? And I thought it would be useful to develop a good PowerPoint presentation or a format for a family home evening around that. My wife and I serve at a care center, and we have a responsibility to do or lead 4 family home evenings every year. And usually they're fun and games, but sometimes they're more serious topics. And this could be one of those serious topics that I bring up, and it would be useful not only for the residents of the care center who probably cannot do very much in this regard, but to the fellow Latter-day Saint co-workers, they would enjoy that. Also down here in Pine Valley, there's a empty nesters kind of family home evening that meets every month. And maybe there's an opportunity I could present some of that great material that we experienced last night in that kind of a setting. This is an ultra conservative community. I was pounced upon when I said that Elder Cassay's or Bishop Cassay's talk in General Conference had something to do with environmental issues. Just the word environment set off a tirade of anger.
Wow.
Anyway, but I think it's time to present in spite of the hostility in ways that are palatable.
That's incredible, Dan. Thank you so much for sharing. It is something I'll be talking to our team about this coming year, because the room for dialogue has been poisoned, and the current feeling in the United States is that the word environment is charged and it's dead. So there's everybody in the United States, and then there's those wacky environmental people over there, and we don't need to pay attention to them. So there's something that we're addressing directly to CCL to say, what kind of language are we going to use? And what they're coming around to is talk clean energy. They like clean energy. Everybody likes cleaning up the mess and clean energy. So there's plenty of room, there's plenty of avenue for conversation, but the word environment is a trigger for people. So we'll talk some more about that.
Yeah.
That was
Remember, anger is a form of climate change.
because of what?
Because it's a bad climate to
Yeah, all that CO2.
you're raising the temperature of the room or what.
So your motto, Doug, is just chill out. That's
Yeah.
That's right. Okay, Katie, you've been waiting patiently, and I want to talk to our friends Karen and Ben. Katie, do you want to tell us a little bit about what you saw this year or what you're looking for next year?
Sure. I feel like I don't have as much to share. I've been kind of unplugged from most aspects of normal life for the past while, including policy and those things that are important to me. But since being home, I voted. That was a fun step for me, and I'm looking forward to this. You're talking about the website and the resources to be able to talk more about climate change and renewable energy in a better way. Excited to hear more about that, to be involved. Sounds like it'd be a great year.
Good. Katie, I want to add one thing that was raised, wanting to talk about these things. Dan Eastman, who just he raised a question, which is in his very conservative ward and community, whether they would allow a serious talk about creation care and stewardship. One of the people who attended last night, the Latter-day Saint Earth Stewardship presentation that many of us attended, is a woman by the name of Mary Kay Smith. And she's one of the heroes. That woman out of Washington, D.C. is one of our heroes out of what she's pioneered for Latter-day Saint Earth Stewardship. She helped organize a local chapter here, and she sent to us to share a 5-page sacrament talk that she gave in her ward that is unbelievably great because she's quoting from the Pearl of Great Price. She's quoting church leaders. She's quoting, our Savior, Jesus Christ. And it's a powerhouse talk. And she did give me permission to share that. So if anybody wants, I'll try to find it and send out a copy of it.
I
Okay.
do.
Oh, I'd love a copy for sure.
Okay.
And I was gonna mention, Katie, you probably outshine all of us because going to school and learning is one of the most powerful things you can do to combat climate change and protect the environment. You're the people that are going to save us. And I just hope the best for you.
If you, thank you, Doug. I totally agree. If you can put your email in the chat, I'll make sure I send to you the Mary Kay Smith talk. Okay. Thank you, everybody. Let's get to Karen and Ben, who live here in the San Francisco Bay Area in the shadow of a great university, the University of California. What would you like to tell us?
Well, we don't have to deal with the hostility that some of you deal with. So, I mean, the assumption is for us that the people that we have contact with mostly here, including church people, are very strong advocates for taking care of the environment. They don't even mind using that word. So, and Ben and I, because we're kind of decrepit now, can't do a whole lot, but I see that we can make wise investments, maybe. We've been involved with organizations that have tried to take care of the world. The Golden Gate Bird Alliance is something, for example, that we've locally been involved with. Used to be called Audubon, now it's called Golden Gate Bird Alliance here. I've been able to, I guess, a little through our church, through our ward, been able to kind of publicize the wonderful firesides that Tom has organized where people have shared what they have been able to do, what they have done. And people are very receptive to that. One of the other things that I try to publicize often is for our ward activities, one family in the ward always make sure that we don't use paper plates, we don't use plastic things. Everything, there's always a dishwashing team, and everything is composted, and the composting things are taken away, and then we're told how much it weighs, how much good we did, and all those things make people feel good. It's not going to help what you're talking about because we're preaching to the choir, because people generally believe that, but some of those things might not be so offensive, I guess, to people in other parts of the world.
Hey, Karen, you do need to preach to the choir because members of the choir need encouragement. They need to have a sanctuary, a place where they know they're not alone and that they're part of something good. And that family collected over 30 pounds of food scraps that would have gone, from one ward dinner, 30 pounds of food scraps that would have gone into landfill to make methane. This is not inconsequential. It's a big deal. So anyway, sorry to interrupt, Karen.
No, kind of all I say. Ben, do you have anything to add?
Well, about once a year I get to give a talk. It's in some way or another, not in church, but there is one thing that I do preach the choir on.
Oh, no.
Karen doesn't even want me to mention it.
No, that's not what you should, that's not going to do any good.
Well, it's okay with me, Ben. This is your moment.
No, no. What he does do is he's very good about donating money to organizations that try to make the world a better place. And, we're lifelong Democrats, but he contributes to that John Curtis guy in Utah because he understands that John Curtis is as close as you get to somebody who is going to try to make things better for the world for the environment in Utah. So we've been now we're on his Christmas card list because, but he's involved with SUA and other things in Utah, even though we don't live in Utah anymore. We haven't lived in Utah for many, many decades. Anyway, that's about what we can do. Not much.
Fantastic.
Hey, Karen,
Except my tongue has been tied, so.
Yes, right.
Karen, let me just, I've been lifelong blue as well. And I have grown to be, I consider John Curtis a close friend.
Good.
And he has taught me something when we talk about how we want to be able to communicate. He is a good example of that, to be able to create the Conservative Climate Caucus and stick with it. That takes a lot of courage. And he's done a good job of it. And the times whenever I've met with him about 3 times, and the way that he has shown me how to communicate is you do it outside. You go for a walk or a hike or something. And for some reason, regardless of people's political background, and Dave, you know this, you've been with, and Craig, when you do that, you're able to communicate about the environment and climate change better than any other place. And you do it in a kind way, and somehow communicating in nature he taught me how to do that.
I would just say too, one thing I've learned from John Curtis, he's done some things that are not advertised. So for instance, he built a big house and made a lot of things to have this house use relatively little energy for how big it was. But it's big enough that he can invite 20 or 25 people over for dinner. And he has invited multiple times these groups of 20 or 25 people from Utah were among the most conservative people in the state, fed them dinner, and then just had a chat with them. And he starts off by saying, hey, is there anybody here who doesn't want to leave the earth better than he found it or she found it? And of course, nobody speaks up and says, no, I want to trash the earth. And can you all, is anybody who doesn't think that 200 years of industrialization and I don't know exactly what else he said. 200 years of industrialization hasn't had some effect on the environment, or on the world around us. And again, people can pretty much agree on that. So he starts with pretty basic stuff that people can agree on, and then kind of moves on from there. I'm not sure how the conversations go after that, but he said he's had about 500 conservative people from Utah come to these dinners over time, and has had these conversations with them.
Yeah, he's figured it out.
Dave, I'm taking notes, and that was too important. So is there anybody here who doesn't want to leave the earth better off? The second one was, is there anyone here who doesn't believe that after 200 years of industrialization, that 200 years of industrialization hasn't had an effect on what did he say?
Well, I don't think he said specifically climate, but on the earth and he may use the word environment. Actually, I think I'm not sure the exact words he used, but
That's pretty daring. I like that. Okay. That's, there is a special sauce, a secret sauce in Utah because you actually have commentators on TV that are from different parties that can actually talk to each other. We don't have that. You never see that in California. The moderates have been driven from the room. It's all one or all the other. And so one of our goals is to become those other voices, those moderates on the left, the moderates on the right, like John Curtis. So I got a question for everybody because we're running out of time, but I got one question I think is a good question. The question is, are you pessimistic or optimistic about humanity?
That's what I was going to say.
That really works for me, Rebecca. Any other thoughts?
Yeah, I have days where I'm very pessimistic, and then days I just get over it.
My first response was it depends on which country you're living in. How optimistic or pessimistic I am.
That's the tricky thing about the climate. It doesn't care what country you're in.
I I don't know. It's kind of hard because you say optimistic, it would kind of roll off your tongue that things are going to be great for the future. And I think there's too many warning signs that it could be, extremely, extremely difficult for the future. But I don't know. I try not to go there. I try to look at the next day, the next year, and keep my nose to the ground because I just don't know what's down the road. And I think maybe I've mentioned some of these. I finished a book that I wrote for my grandkids. And the reason I wrote it, it's about a 65 page book about my experience in citizens climate lobby over 11 years. And I say that they're probably going to be experiencing more extreme, difficult effects of the climate than I experienced in my life. And I want to tell them, some things that I did. But my gut feeling is they're going to have some real challenges ahead related to the climate and some other things. But I believe in resilience of humanity. I think they're going to work through it, but how it's going to be in terms of livelihoods and things like that, I really have no idea.
Fair enough. What I like about Dave's response is he's realistic. I don't think this is the time really to go in for rose-colored glasses because there's some serious things going on. There's a lot of good things going on because my question was, are you pessimistic about humanity? There's so many advances in science, in medicine, in neurological understanding, in earth sciences. There are good things going on. So let's hear from some other people. What do you think, everybody? Did any of you read this book came out a few years ago called Sapiens
Yeah.
by Yuval Noah Harari, that guy?
Yeah.
That's an amazing book.
Yes. Yes.
This is what he said. He says, I try to be a realist. I can summarize the situation of humankind in this early part of the 21st century. He says, things are better than ever. I know we're not quite sure about that. He says, things are better than ever. Things are still quite bad, which encompasses both of Dave Follin's responses. But then thirdly, he says, things can become much worse. And then he sort of closes it with this. The fact that things are still quite bad and can become much worse should make us wary of being too optimistic. The fact that things are better implies that we can improve things. It is not inevitable that things will actually become worse. The future is never inevitable. It is up to us to shape it. So that's what this very interesting Jewish, non-religious historian, humanitarian type of guy wrote in his great book at the very end of his great book. So I recommend that to you.
I find Tom,
Yeah, yeah,
yeah,
yeah, of course. Truth is one circle, all truth, and we'll just, as long as we recognize that this is a quote, direct quote from Yuval Noah Harari, we're in good shape. Good. I'll send it to you, Rebecca.
I'll tell you, Tom, the one reason I have to be optimistic, I have a stubborn side of me, and I know that the way, and I'm not going to name, I don't need to name names, the way people gain power is through money and fear. And fear and division get spread more and more every day. And I've just decided I'm not going to cave into that. I'm not going to give them the pleasure. So we have to be optimistic, because when you're too pessimistic, you empower them without naming names.
Well, this is what we learned when you study law, and as a lawyer, I can tell you my favorite Latin phrase is um, uh, non carborundum illegitimati.
Don't let the bastards win, or whatever.
Don't let the bastards wear you down. That's
Yeah,
right.
wear you down. That's
That's right.
Barbara. Yeah.
But yeah, sure. Sure. We're here to be realistic, and we gotta be resilient and tough.
Yeah.
Last night there was this Latter-day Saint Earth Stewardship guy from Germany, Volker Molten.
Yeah.
And did you hear his quote at the end? I mean, he said, we were talking about being nice and following the Savior, and this is what he said. And he's a church member. He said, powerful interests are using propaganda to create divisions and diversions. And they want to suppress the things that we know about the changing climate, about the need for creation care, and the things that science knows that are facts. And he says these propaganda campaigns, these are from my notes, these propaganda campaigns have made it very difficult to talk about these things. And he mentions social media, this new era of fake news, and so forth and so forth. He says we have to be clear to reject fake news, not just be nice to each other, but to reject misinformation. And I thought, that's a guy I want on my team, talking reality and what we're going to need to do. So as we go into 2025, let's think about these things. We may have to have one of our Zoom sessions about combating these evils. And he used something about the greedy and the rich and the powerful, but it somehow didn't get into my notes. It can't be good guys like us. It could never be that. So, all right. I'm sort of babbling now, and that means it usually means it's time to end the meeting. Anything else to add? Okay, well, thank you, everybody. Just one reminder, our next Zoom with the the LDS Action Team for Citizen Climate Lobby, we always meet at Zoom at this time, the third Wednesday of the month, and that'll be Wednesday, January 15th. It's at 6 o'clock Utah time. And I want to thank everybody for being part of this work. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Tom.
Thank you.
Thank you for your leadership.
You bet. See ya.
Hope you guys have a really nice Christmas. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, Merry Christmas to you all.
Thanks all.
Yeah.